Okay, so I'm calling the meeting to order. Is that okay? This is not my favorite part. Okay, so can we do a roll call?
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody just, Dale Curtis is here. Is this how I do it?
Yeah, just you need to do the board members. And so that's
Okay. Dr. Gresh, Reverend Hayes, Kevin Sombart, myself, Mayor Welch, Chief Curtis. That's our board as it exists right this minute here, except for Angela, who's not here, and Tina.
And if you want to quickly approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, do I have any changes to the minutes or edits?
None.
None, okay. Can I get somebody to approve the minutes?
I make a
Move
motion
to approve.
will be approved with any necessary changes if there need be.
Okay, so hold on, say that again.
He made a motion, I'll second his motion.
Okay, all right, thanks both of you, thank you. All right, so we got the business part done. And Kevin, I'll catch you up. We were just having kind of a informal discussion, but one of the things that Reverend Hayes said is that he wondered, well, he was giving his own experience to say that he thought that this board has been a little different, almost like a misunderstanding of what the purpose of this board was from what he initially signed up for to what he's found it to be, and wondered if maybe Cindy had some frustration that might be in parallel or congruent with that. Is that right, Reverend Hayes?
Yes.
Do you mind repeating kind of how you found this board to be different than what you originally thought?
Because I thought initially that this board was more of a review board rather than an engagement board or rather than a networking board. I think really had it not been for Mayor Welch, I would not have accepted it, honestly. But because I feel personally
I'm glad I talked you into it, Eric.
but I thought that actually my feelings were that I had enough networking at church trying to bring some of our members together, the young and old and different things. And so I really was not interested in networking as far as bringing the community together with the police department and vice versa. But since I became a part of the board, I really felt the importance of it. But that was not my first initial thought of it.
So almost like the amount of influence we have is less than what you might have initially thought, and that we're really developing because this has never been done before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So my thought about this discussion, so the discussion of the August meeting is mostly, in my opinion, or my hope, and please feel free at any point to say, well, I don't agree, or I'd like to add this or that, is just to say, what do we need to reflect on about that meeting and about Cindy's departure? And then also, how do we support leadership, find new leadership and board members in general going forward? Because we have other business that I know our next meeting on Monday, we're going to be talking about, which they're interconnected, but they're not the same, which is the movement or any changes to our charter. So, I guess I'd just like it to open the floor to discussion or thoughts.
Anyone?
Well,
I think that we're an advisory board, and we're appointed by the city council. We're not a policymaking board. The influence we have is through our discussions and our openness to invite the public to also comment on what we're discussing and to share opinions. In that, COVID's kind of hurt that to some degree because it's not face-to-face or hadn't been face-to-face. And so the participation from those that are attending the meetings has been limited somewhat, except for the public comments that they would write in advance of our meetings. So I get, Pastor, what you're saying is that you thought that it was more of a policy review board
Yes.
than an engagement board. And
Policy review, and also I thought that it was a board that would even sit in on issues, complaints, what have you, from the community or from the police department about situations.
right. So yeah, and I want to say that if it were, I would not be sitting here. Because that's not what I signed up for. I signed up for an engagement board to improve the communication between the police department and the overall community of Webster Groves. Not just one section of the community of Webster Groves, but everyone. While still exploring and looking at the historical issues that have occurred that have now obviously, and I've learned a lot since sitting on the board, that I didn't realize that there was the pain that was in the Black community of what occurred some years ago. I don't know, or what is perceived to have occurred more recently. And I think that's important to have, you know, when issues come up and when situations arrive. That's why I think it's important to have Chief Curtis explain the situation from a police standpoint and from a procedure standpoint on what how the police respond to particular situations through their normal procedures and the training that they've received. So, and I, through that whole process initially, I learned a great deal about what they do, why they do what they do, what procedures they follow. And you know, some people said, well, we haven't done anything. Well, there were some policies that have been changed because of the discussions that we've had. And I think part of the engagement with the community is us meeting on a regular basis. That is a portion of the engagement with the community, is the fact that we are having public meetings on a regular basis. But as far as actually reviewing a police action, I'm not qualified to do that. And you know, that's, again, that's not what I, you know, joined the board to do. So.
And I understand completely, Kevin, what you're saying. But in I guess looking at it a different way, are you qualified to engage with what the community feels? I mean, though you are part of the community, but we're hearing from the police department, and I'm glad that I am on this board, you know, prior to not coming on. But are we hearing what the community are saying or what they're feeling, their engagement? I understand now what police traffic stops, how dangerous they are, which I didn't see before this board. You know, I see things differently now. But I think an issue is that we're not hearing from the community. We're hearing, you know, we're seeing where the police are and why they're doing, but what about the community? What are we doing to get the community to engage? I think we're missing that.
I think, Reverend Hayes, I think you're right. I think that's like our biggest area of growth. I think we've tried some things, but our biggest area of growth needs to be, how do we engage the community to listen? And to your point, Kevin, the whole community, not, you know, but how do we engage the community to be interested enough in our work that they're gonna share and then we can listen. And then based on that, that will give us direction. And I know we're trying, so I don't think that it's like, that we're not trying, but I think we do have a lot more to do there.
Yeah, to get the community more involved. The police department they're involved. They're sharing, they're listening, they're hearing, but we are not reaching, and I don't know how we can do it, but I don't think we're reaching the community to get them to interact.
Well, I want to ask a real blunt question. And it's something, Katie, you brought up. Is the community interested? I mean, there are a lot of big issues that are going on in Webster Groves right now. And a lot of the community, I mean, to get the public engaged in their government in general is very difficult.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
And for unless there is a particular issue that occurs that gets people involved or upset or whatever, and then they respond to that.
Right.
That's the only engagement that we've really seen. And so I struggled as board chair for the first almost 2 years to figure out how we can. So we developed the survey and we met with the AID 2 or 3 times. And we met with the Rotary Club, and we met with the students and heard the stories from the students at Webster University. So those 4 engagement activities, and we wanted to expand that, I think. And then this nasty COVID thing happened. So that we were kind of prohibited from, unless they had Zoom or computers or online access or any of these other things, that we couldn't have the meetings or the group discussions that we wanted. But I do understand the frustration in the perception of what this board really is supposed to be.
Yeah.
I come from a government background, so I read laws, statutes, regulations, and I read the ordinance, and I knew through the ordinance what we were charged to do. And that's what I tried to do as board chair. But I knew that once we got the administrative stuff going and got this thing rolling, that I think it would be good for someone else to step in to have fresh, clean, new ideas on how we can do that. And I thought Cindy did a great job with that. And the discussions that we had were different, and in some respects a lot better than the discussions we had when I was board chair. And some things that, I mean, we got a great, I think, mission statement developed, and we developed a really good vision moving forward. But things in government don't happen as quickly as some people want them to happen. And Katie, you and I had talked yesterday. That's the design of government. It's designed that way. It can never, a lot of people think that government needs to operate like the private sector. It can't, it won't, it will never operate like the private sector. It's not designed to do that. It's designed for, it's a slow moving process, so that there's not a knee-jerk reaction to something that occurs to change something without it being well thought and well vetted by many people in the community and by our representatives, and our representatives are the city council. So, and some things, and I haven't looked at what the AID suggestions were moving forward for the changes to the charter, but I did at one point, and I went in great detail on that one meeting about what I thought were important changes and what I disagree with as far as those changes. And I'd have to pull my notes because it was recorded, but I don't know how well those particular items were actually recorded in writing. So, I could certainly share that again, but
I don't know, some thoughts I'm having, Kevin, as you're talking is, I think one of the things like about local level government, hopefully, is that we can be more responsive and flexible, and like, just like how our charter is up for the, the language is up to be reviewed, this is a perfect opportunity to build in, language that could make us even more responsive and flexible to the needs of the community based on the past 3 years experience. But I agree with you that government is slow and is slower than activism. But I think also part of our job on this board is to listen and be responsive to activism, as well as, well, any stakeholders in what we're doing. So I don't know, Scott, we haven't heard anything from you. I'm curious if you have thoughts.
Well, I think when Cindy was expressing that frustration during the last meeting, she brought up how much she did think that the meeting with the students, and I think all of us had felt that was the one big piece of what we should be doing, something just like that and more. How that seemed to be such a positive, and it does fit already within our charter, but we can expand upon it. And I really am hopeful that that's how we're engaging. To answer Reverend Hayes, what are we doing to engage the communities? I think that was an example, and hopefully more of that, even despite the COVID limitations. It's what I'm looking forward to. And I think celebrating, how do we help each other? We help unload some of the work. We're all busy in our own lives big time because of COVID right now. Make sure that nobody's burdened with the work too much. I don't know if that was a factor with being the board chair. I think there's a lot involved. Kevin and Katie and Cindy know that, but help unload that, help plan a few more events, just like we had. I think that's along the lines of what we should be doing. So I was feeling positive that we had come up with a mission statement and vision, and we're headed in the right direction, and we've had some success, and we're going to, we should have more of it to come if we just keep building on that. So
Can
that's
I
why I was
ask-
surprised.
Can I ask a really basic question? What is it that the board wants to do that the current ordinance will not allow you to do? What is it?
So I don't know if I necessarily knew this was a need or a want, but as I was listening, what it sounds like is a need or a want from some part of our community is to be able to have a place that is perceived to be safe to discuss a police action that is not seen as, that potentially is seen as unfair or racist, but without having a police presence, because potentially that is not safe to do. And that's something that I was hearing that maybe was a point of frustration. Like Cindy was saying, like, why can't we meet without Dale? And I think that was something that Neil talked about, like that, that's just not possible due to Mayor Welch, yours and Chief Curtis's, like I forget what the special name is. You're not full members, but
We're ex officio liaisons.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I was hearing, but is anybody else hearing something different?
But I think we addressed it by saying we could just break off, just like we started this meeting, in a smaller than quorum group.
Right.
Hear their message, summarize it, say, Reverend Hayes, you and me, 3 of us go and meet with a group. Go out, survey, get those opinions, and then express them forward and summarize them. If they felt that was fine, even within our charter as it exists.
Yeah,
Because-
I heard that too, but I also, if anybody else heard anything different, the way that I interpreted, and again, this is interpretation, so it may not be helpful, but I think that seemed upsetting or stifling to Cindy. And then I imagine that there might be other people that felt feel that that's stifling as well. But
I think
that's
it- I think
conjecture.
it's in both. I think that possibly some may feel that it's not a safe haven to come and express or vent, what have you. But I think the problem is getting the community to come and see. Because personally, I believe that if they would come to a meeting or you know or Zoom in or on sit on a meeting, and if they got to meet personally the mayor and Dale, I think they would see them differently. But the issue is getting them to that point. I think that's and we don't know the answer. I think we just have to keep doing what we're doing, and then increase in it. With of course COVID and other issues, because I believe this
Mhm.
coming Saturday, if I'm right, Mayor Wells, we were supposed to be planning something to do in Ivy Crockett Park.
Yeah, yes, we said we were going to do that either in September or October, weren't we?
Yeah,
It was-
October 23rd was the date. actually.
October. So that should be on the agenda next week about moving forward with that. That at least introduces people to the community. But thank you for your response to my question.
Does that seem right, Mayor Welch? Is that, I mean, was that your guess as well, or did you have other thoughts?
No, I just wanted to hear what it was because it's a little bit thorny. And I think that when Scott said you could still get 3 people on a board without having a quorum to meet with individuals, there's a safe space that's there. But even at that, what would you do with that information? Tell me, you get 3 people who come and they have a very serious issue. What do you do with that as a board? What's the process for taking that kind of conversation forward? Do you bring it to the whole board? Where do you go with that?
Right, I think that's a good question because we really haven't had to face that. And so I think a good thing to do as a board is to plan for things that could happen that we haven't faced yet. So Scott, go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking about the example when one of the students stated that they felt they were being followed. They left late in the night from their boyfriend's house and they were being followed all the way to their home, right? I don't know if you remember that from the visit. And they, in a way, they were expressing a sense of harassment from that the police were following them all the way to their home. And then every single night, every time she would stay over at her boyfriend's house to a certain point. Then we brought that to the group, and Chief Curtis mentioned, well, here's the reason we've been doing that, because we're having a lot of things going on at that time of night in particular, and we wanted to make certain about what was going on, not meaning to harass, but I think it's bringing together those 2 different perspectives at the same time and discussing them. And then what I would do with it is then feed back upon it and continue a discussion. That's what I would think would be an example from my standpoint of what the board would do, hearing what some people in the community are feeling and maybe hurt that they're having that's not intended many times, and then bringing that to the group, discussing it, thinking of different ways to address it in a policy way moving forward. And I think there has been some responsiveness by the chief and mayor to discuss, various aspects, just like the license plate reader change that happened. As we discuss things, we can make change, or it can happen from that discussion. And I think that's another way we support one another in what we do. So taking the message from the group that we're talking to, bringing it to the board, discussing it, and then giving feedback back.
So one of the things I thought was interesting, because when I met with the Rotary Club, and I was the only one, Dale was there, Jerry was there, and because her husband's a member, and none of the other board members were able to make that particular meeting. And we discussed what things that we had done as a board, We had discussed some of the policy changes that were made. Dale explained the LPR system and on all that. And the overall concern was, did that affect the ability to properly police? Do you think that, and that was the question that was asked to Dale, is do you think that there could be possibly an uptick in crime because these things were changed? Okay, so that was their concern. So it's a completely different concern from that portion of the community than it is from another portion of the community. And right now we've got an uptick in certain crimes that are occurring everywhere. Okay, so as an engagement board, I think we should also be engaging with the community that would like to have good, effective law enforcement in that community, to keep our community safe.
And so how do we reach those in the community to give them awareness or to draw their interest in? The problem I had was even when we did the survey, and I brought it to my congregation, even had the forums there, and nobody participated. It was it was. I have an older community congregation, so it's not a lot of young adults there. But I think it's the young adults that we really need to reach.
Right, but I mean, you're right, Eric, our Pastor Hayes. How do we do that?
How do
I
we
mean,
get?
how do you get people in? I mean, I went to the night out event at the pool. With the exception of a few people that walked out of the pool, nobody was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to the firemen that were there, and I talked to the 3 police officers that were there. And a few children came out of the pool area, but nobody showed up.
Yeah.
Well, who is our communications person for the city?
Jenny Starkey, she's fairly she's
new,
been there a
yeah.
few
I mean,
months.
maybe Jenny could come to one of our meetings and give us some advice on how to be more effective as communicators in our community, and what tools is she using, and how could we piggyback on that? Because I mean, my guess for young people is that, I mean, I know we talk about this often, is that social media might have to be a little bit, there might have to be more engagement, but we also know that that opens things up in different ways, but I bet she probably has ways to deal with that. That would be my guess.
That's a good idea to ask her to participate in one of the meetings in the future and put her on the agenda. I think that's a great idea, Katie.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
Can I ask something of the board and of us all, really? Mayor, I spoke with you a while back about at our church doing the COVID vaccination, and we talked about partnering together. And what happened was the Department of Health were unable to come on a weekend. They said they could come on a Monday or a Wednesday, but our church thought we would get a better make a better impact and get more people if we did on a Saturday. And so we're looking now to October to do that. But we're planning on doing also a grill the community, and just at our church parking lot, just grilling hot dogs and maybe hamburgers, and giving out water and chips, and just inviting the community to come. If we do that, could we have the board present? Maybe have a
Be great.
with the police engagement, community engagement board, where they could just come and talk. Is there some way we could do that and maybe put it in the Webster Kirkwood Times? And
yeah, we certainly
Yeah.
could do that if we have some volunteers to do that. And if you're talking about doing the COVID shots, I think Dale and I could probably talk to the fire department and see who's out there that might be available to do that also.
but we
What
do
date
know-
is that, Pastor Hayes?
I'm sorry,
What date is that?
we don't have a date yet because the health department.
Oh, okay, okay.
For it later this month, but they said they didn't have enough staff to be there to give vaccinations on a Saturday, but they could do it on a weekday. But the turnout we thought would be much less if we did it on a
Yeah.
weekday. So that's what we were looking for a Saturday. And so what we want to do, they said they would try to get back with us sometime in October. We know October is a rainy season, or sometimes, and the weather's dropped. But we're hoping that maybe within the next couple of weeks, even if we don't do the COVID vaccination, that we will do a grill the community, where we will just have hot dogs, and chips and water to pass out. Anybody can just come up and get something to eat, and maybe with just at that event, we could have the board there.
Can we tie that together with what we were planning?
I'm
Whatever.
hoping we can try to get just so the community could get to see who the board are and maybe get to meet with, some of us and get a feel of us. May not be a good idea, but I just thought.
No, I think it's a great idea. I think that's what we're hoping for on the other event, definitely.
Right.
So I think it is the idea. I think
Katie, can I?
it's a great idea.
Can
Dale,
I?
yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I try not to interject myself too much. I really I don't want the board to feel like I'm trying to persuade them or move them one way or the other. From what I was hearing from the last meeting and the feelings that I was getting from listening to what Cindy said and from some of the outside groups, I think they want something in addition to the community engagement part of the board. I don't know whether it's a good idea or not, but I think there's some workarounds to some of the things that they're suggesting as opposed to closed meetings. But for instance, when we had the Webster University students came and tell some their perspectives and stories, that we might be able to do something in line with the Zoom or virtual meeting where if they could do it, anonymously, where they don't have to say, this is who I am. I'm interested in that. They're saying it's from a historical perspective of things that have happened in the past that they would like to address and get some feeling that they've been heard. And either they could do that anonymously, or what you were talking about, a couple of 3 people, the mayor was saying, well, what would we do with that? If you could bring that back to the board as a whole and say, this is what we heard, bring that to me. I would hope that you have the confidence, and I think we've proven many times that when we get a complaint, we're not looking to necessarily place blame, or certainly not to have some kind of reciprocation against someone who's made the complaint, but rather to see what it is, and if there is something wrong, or to try and correct it, or at least to explain why something happened. So I think maybe that's the direction that might help with some of the things that Cindy was having a concern about. Like I said, certainly we could do something with having someone come and make a presentation anonymously and not, identify themselves, or like I said, go without the quorum, go to a couple or 3 members to tell their stories, and that be brought back to the board where we can then address whatever that issue might be. And again, I think those are some of the things that we can work around what the sunshine law with the charter was preventing that was causing an issue. So again, I'm not trying to interject myself, but I think that it would be good to try and find some of those avenues to try and address some of those kind of concerns.
So Chief Curtis, I really appreciate that. And I want to piggyback on it, which is one of the things that I think about is that if we're doing the best, like that I can imagine, is that we build a lot of trust in the community so that the community trusts us, the community has a growing trust in the police, and the police have a trust in what they're hearing from the community, so that if there is ever a time where something terrible happens, we have a basis of trust to communicate and to grow through that. So I hope that never happens, but I think that that basis of trust is like, I'm willing to listen, even if something happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I'm willing to listen to that and believe that experience and understand how it impacts you. And I think that's a really important aspect of what we can facilitate. And I think that's what I think that's kind of what you're saying, that we're willing to listen, and that you as the police chief are willing to listen too.
Right.
Am I
I think
hearing
that-
you?
Yes, I think that's an important piece of it. And it's not always, for instance, the things that I've heard, I do not in any way disbelieve the discomfort that people have felt or whatever, but sometimes there is an explanation for it. It may not make them, it may not correct what they feel, or they may have a different perspective, but at least it gives us a chance to put it out in the open and discuss it and determine whether it's not something we change. As you said, there have been a couple of policy changes based upon what we've heard from the community, what we've discussed as a board. And those things are all a result of the community coming to the board and having concerns about certain issues. And as I said, it doesn't have to be someone who necessarily identifies themselves. We're not looking, especially if we're talking something that happened 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. We're not looking to try and go back and discipline an officer necessarily. But we're looking at, okay, is there something there that has continued or that is continuing that we need to take a look at, and we need to correct? And certainly we need to recognize that people at least have that perspective, and it's something that's hurting the relationship between the police department and the community.
I remember the video montage at the Alliance presentation. That was another example where we heard a lot and we saw many self-reports, and they were done on video like you're suggesting. I think that was the second time we sat in with the Alliance. As an example of taking the listening, taking it back.
Right, and they identify themselves. So again, like I said, if there's somebody who's not comfortable doing that, who wants to remain anonymous, they could relate something where they would at least feel that there's a safe space that they could do it. I mean, I guess they might feel that we could actually track it down and some way identify them, but all I can do is assure them that would not happen. And if that's the case, and then they could talk to, like I said, maybe 2 or 3 board members to present what it is, and you could bring it back in a kind of a synopsis form, and we could, take a look at it without having to identify them or having any information that would feel like it could come back to hurt them in some way. So again, I think that's a big piece of what the community is looking for from the board, in addition to the engagement part. And from what the feeling that I get from Cindy and from a lot of other people who have an interest in what the board's work is doing, is that we do that be a piece of what we do in addition to the engagement work.
So maybe that's an ongoing, and maybe there's a way we can write that into the charter about, listening, or the opportunity to be, and again, it's not about, obviously nothing about disciplinary action for police officers, but like hearing and understanding experiences, and hopefully having an avenue to examine that, like critically examine that, and know that that's being heard by the police department.
Right. I mean, and I can't ever promise that there can be some things, like I said, that are necessary because of the job that we do and the way that we do it and the way that we have to sometimes operate. But there also may be things that we can change. So at least people feel like they've been heard, and that we are listening, and we will, and whenever possible, we will address changes that we can make in a positive way. And if not, then at least explain why it is that we do things, and hopefully have a better understanding of why something happened.
Okay, thanks, Chief Curtis. Does anybody have anything they want to ask or add to that?
I think that's important to get one side, and as part of an educational process as well, if something was done as it was supposed to have been done, okay, because that is a policing technique or whatever that is necessary, that maybe the person that is expressing that hurt or that story, if you will, then has a better understanding of why it occurred the way it did. Okay, and so it's an educational process going really both ways. I don't know if we're hearing from the people that are hurt. I don't know if we're hearing from the folks that have the concerns. And as Reverend Hayes said, I don't know how to reach that. And is it because they feel unsafe coming and speaking to either individual board members or in this forum. You know, I don't know, you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? So, we don't know what's out there because we haven't fully really engaged. We haven't heard back from, you know, the community.
So, I mean, that's part of the process of what's happening, in terms of, you know, like how to tell the story of our board, that we're a newer board, that, you know, we started out doing some things, then the pandemic hit, and now we're actually growing and, digging into like what is actually needed versus what was imagined to be needed 3 years ago. So I think that it is part of the process, but I do understand people's frustration that it feels slow at times. And all we can do is keep plugging away at what we know now, which it sounds like we're trying to communicate, that we continue to communicate or communicate more who we are, what we do, clarify what we do for ourselves and for other people in the community, and then actually do those things that we say we're going to do. And hopefully we're able to do that in a more effective way as maybe the pandemic is hopefully shifting or alleviating a little bit. Hopefully. I'm aware of the time, so I guess the next agenda item, if you guys are okay to move on. And again, this is probably something that is going to continue on to the next meeting, but like we have 2 open board positions. And that includes that I would not like to remain chair. And I think we've talked about this in the past before. If our chair could be a person of color in our community, I think that is that's a better choice for our group. But, you know, again, I know that we can't force people into positions, but I would like to not be the chair. So do you guys, I mean, I don't know, what's the process of like recruitment or encouraging people that we know or that we know of in the community to become involved?
Well, I can tell you that, you know, it really is useful to have someone who is a business owner on this board. And so Jean, who was here with us, her commitments just got too major. We should try to recruit a business owner, someone in the community who owns a business who might be willing to join us. There's an Old Webster Trade Association meeting tomorrow. I'm happy to say something like, you know, if we're looking for folks to serve on the Police Community Engagement Board. So, and then we should look at what sometimes good boards look at what's missing on your board. You know, do you need someone? We don't need someone with finance, but sometimes a board will say we need someone with a financial background. And when we set this board up, we have the medical person with Scott. We have Katie, who has the counseling background, Eric, who has the pastor background, Kevin, who has the business and some government background. So everybody who was initially on this had some sort of background to contribute to the good of the organization. And that's really what we should be looking for, is what kind of categories do we have out there that we really need?
There were some professors at Webster University that have dealt with a similar board that I spoke to before the meeting we had. So that's another opportunity,
That's an
potentially
opportunity.
people that have previous experience. And I think that might be another option.
It's good.
So what is the process now? If somebody's interested, do they fill out an application online and then that's brought to a city council meeting and reviewed at the next city council meeting?
When there is an opening, yes, we will solicit applications. People put their applications in. And then there's an interview process because the council members would like to at least meet the person who has applied for a board or commission. They will typically come to a meeting, speak for a few minutes or so, and then the city council would determine whether someone is appointed or not. And it's usually, again, based on that criteria. I mean, a recent library appointment we made, the liaison said the library board really needs someone with a financial background. And so someone with a financial background was appointed. So it's not that the council doesn't listen to the various commissions, but so you have an opportunity to solicit and, you know, make a suggestion.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Anybody? Okay. Then our last agenda item is review of the agenda for this coming Monday. So in a week from today. I had been taking some notes. We're gonna, I assume, be talking about the charter. And so
Let's call it the ordinance,
the
okay?
ordinance, yes.
The ordinance, because the charter really refers to that overriding city document and it gets confusing. So it's the
Okay.
ordinance.
Our ordinance. Okay, and we're gonna be talking about the event in October. Is that right? Our Ivory Crockett
We
Park?
need to, yeah.
Great.
Okay,
I mean, we need to talk about that, or we need to potentially do something at the same time that Reverend Hayes has his.
yeah,
Another, if we have an event there and then another one at Ivory Crockett, I'm not sure whether people would attend both. Do you see what I mean? So
totally, yeah,
we may be able to take advantage of the fact that there is an event at the community church and be able to participate in that event and help cook. I mean, Pastor Hayes, would you mind if some police officers were there?
Love it.
You know,
Yeah.
and so we may be able to do that instead of trying to have two.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, you could block off part of the street there too easily. So if you wanted to have it at Old Community Baptist, there's that triangular street that's real easy to close off. They have some games and stuff.
That would be
Right.
good.
Requires a special permit there.
Right.
Just saying.
Yes, yes, Dale.
I would think we could probably get that, right?
That's
All right,
that's Mara and the police department. Yeah,
Police
sure-
department does.
I'm sure
plays a
it
big
would be
role.
okay, but we do, that's something we do, if you choose to do that, we do need to plan a little bit in advance for that.
Right.
okay, and then I don't know if it's too short of notice, but we did mention our new communications person coming. Do you think it's too short of notice?
I'd wait.
Yeah.
We have a lot
Okay.
going on at this
Okay.
meeting.
Okay,
Let's do it in one more month.
okay,
Maybe have Jen come in October.
Mhm. Is this Monday or Tuesday night that we're meeting?
Tuesday night, the
oh,
28th.
Tuesday, did I say, yeah, Tuesday, sorry.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's the fourth. We pretty much
Yeah.
set on the fourth Tuesday of each month.
Is there anything else that we need to put on that agenda? Okay,
If you don't want to be chair any longer, Katie, you might want to make sure you just put that on for discussion as well.
thanks for looking out for me. Okay, be thinking about that, people.
Well, there is a little trick.
What's
And the
that?
trick is that you nominate and elect the person who's not here. as the new chair. I mean, this is a
that
little
fair?
trick that we have done in the past, you know? So someone who's not here tonight could be nominated and elected chair by 4 of you.
I mean, I have an idea. But that's too mean. We can't do that.
It is mean.
Okay, we'll talk about that more. And then I did not for this meeting get any, public comment or emails, but that's always open. And so that'll be on the agenda too.
Great.
Okay. All
We have
right.
a attendee hand. Do we need that? I think.
Oh, I see an attendee hand. Yeah. What? Oh, how do we let this person in?
I
If
can,
this person, how do we let Farrell in?
I can let her in.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for letting me in. I just was listening that you're going to take up the statute next week. And I wondered if we could in any way help. I'm just concerned that not everyone's had time to look at all those red lines and stuff. I just was wishing we could grease the wheels somehow, either by meeting with a couple of people from the board prior to the meeting, or else briefly presenting at the meeting, so that, because like, for example, when Mr. Brentrigger came, he started saying 12.1.2 and you guys didn't even have it in front of you. So I just wanted to make sure that time could be used efficiently, and wondered if y'all could talk about that for a sec.
I think that's a good idea. Right, so we don't want to kind of go in blind to that, and maybe, I mean, I'm brainstorming through it right now as after Farrell's comment. Like, I have 2 thoughts. One is, does everybody have a copy of it? That's one question. I know I have a copy of it.
Is it any different than what we received from the AID in previous meetings? I can't remember which meeting it was. It was,
I think the
'cause I
last
did not
copy,
attend last meeting.
the last copy I have is dated May 14th, 2021.
It's the same one that Kevin went over when he,
Okay,
yeah, it's that.
Okay. So, I mean, my 2 thoughts are, if the Alliance potentially could do a presentation, that might be one way to go. Another way to go would be for each of us to review it prior to the meeting and come with our own thoughts. Another way would be, like Farrell said, several of us could meet potentially over the weekend, and then, or, on Monday or something, and then everybody also review it. I'm curious what people's thoughts are on that.
I would think it'd just be important that we all are looking at the same document. So if we could just come back to us via email. I don't know if that can come from,
So maybe
it should come-
resend it. via
resend it
email.
once, let us
Resend.
review it, look at it. And I don't know if that comes from Alliance or that comes from Mayor or whom. And then maybe even highlight a couple of the really significant discussion points we want to make. Or even the Alliance could potentially say, we want to make sure you guys focus in on these 4 points or 5 points.
I think, can't Aaron send this out, Dale? And maybe then if the Alliance has 3 or 4 points that they really want to focus in on, they could do a little cover letter with pointing out 4 of the points that they'd like us to look at.
Yeah, I have a copy of it and I can get it to Erin. She can send it to the board. Just when you are reviewing it, keep in mind the discussions from the last meeting.
Right.
Because there are a couple of items in there that did have a concern. As I said before, though, I mean, I think there's workarounds for most, if not all of them, but that's something you might want to think about as well. I'll have Aaron send them out.
And did the lawyer, did he write up those things? You know, he presented a lot to us and went through them, 11.2.3 and all that. Did he put any document on there? Or
He's,
that I could see
he
his
and
concern?
I spoke about it, and he sent me a short memo of the things he was going to talk about. Let me take a look at that, and if not, I'll get with Neil and try and have him do just a short, specific perspective on which items are the ones that are of concern, if that would be helpful.
I
Well,
think that would be good.
That'd be good. Then you'll have AID's top items, you'll have Neil's items, and you'll have the document.
And I also
Everything.
think we, as board members, should be encouraged to, if there are places where we think the language could be enhanced or changed or deleted, that, you know, that our critical thinking skills are important on this as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would 100% agree. I mean, our hope was that it would be a launching pad for you all to review because you're the ones actually living it, right? And but my only hesitation on identifying 2 or 3 things is that there's some small things in there that we hope you'll consider, like lowering the requirement of the age of the student so that a kid could maybe get this on their resume before their college application, because that might be more appealing. So there's some, what I would say are some good ideas that probably aren't very controversial, but it would take you guys getting in the weeds to see those more minor points. So I don't really want to just say, we really care about these 2 things and not at least get the benefit of the fact we had like 9 people brainstorm what we could possibly add to make it stronger and hopefully just be helpful in terms of ideas for you all to look at.
Farrell, if I can make a suggestion, I mean, that document is very thorough and, you know, has some pretty complex language. If maybe you could condense that down to some more, just in general, these are bullet points of the things that we think that are important, and include those lesser items in them so that the board can have a better sense of what's in there.
So put it like in list form instead of in the statute, kind of.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'd be happy to do that. That's a good idea. And again, I don't want you to, I want it to be the board getting to, you know, weigh in. It's not about like, can you sign off on all this stuff? It's just wanting to take advantage of that work that got done. It might jog your own ideas. So.
Right. And I think matter of fact, I'm certain that's how they're, don't we speak for you, Katie, but I think that's how the board's looking at it. It's those are suggestions and recommendations and things that they can either build on or disregard depending upon what they think the board needs to do.
Thank you for thanks for letting me chime in, guys.
Yeah, and I'll pull out, I'll pull back out my notes that I made on the previous review, and maybe we can discuss some of that too. And I remember the one item that Farrell just mentioned on lowering the age. I thought that was a fabulous idea, on trying to get more participation from the younger members of the community. And so, you know, it's those kinds of things that I think might help help the overall structure of the board, really, and get some varying opinions and ideas about what's, you know, what direction we need to move going forward. So, but, and I do want to reiterate, I am not interested in stepping back in as board chair. So.
Yeah, that just means you have to be at all the board meetings, because if you miss, who knows what'll happen.
Yeah. Well, the one I missed last month was the first one I ever missed. So.
All right, well, I guess it's time to adjourn unless anybody has anything else they'd like to add. And I really appreciate everybody taking an extra hour to be here. I was just thinking that our next meeting could be very, very, very long if we didn't stay on top of some of this. And I also want to just say thanks to everybody, because I know I felt really sad when I got Cindy's resignation, and it hit me harder than I imagined. And so, not that I had imagined it, but it hit me pretty hard. And so I know that all of us had a lot of feelings about that. And so I know we're doing hard work, and it's hard to keep doing it sometimes when it's slow or, you know, it can be confusing. So I just appreciate everybody's willingness and time. So anyway, thanks. And
Thank
I'll-
you, Katie.
you.
we'll
Good
see you.
meeting,
And I'm moving-
Katie.
Good to see you guys. And so I guess I moved to adjourn. Do I get a second? Right? Do I have to have a second? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Good night.